My background obviously is in medicine, that's as a psychiatrist, but also I did social anthropology as well. So I'm what I feel is a very social psychiatrist, very interested in it. Although from psychiatry I'm very interested in mental illness more than well-being, but I'm going to try and present the well-being work to you. But I'm open to kind of discuss more things in detail. And because I'm basing everything I'm going to share with you on the Oxford Student Survey, I'm going to first tell you a little bit about that and then share some findings from the last wave. So that says school-based mental health interventions there. So that's the world I'm quite interested in understanding what happens in schools. And so when we say kind of school-based mental health interventions, we've got to think who gives the treatment? Is it from within the school, from peers, to as external from mental health services, for example, what we call CAMS, and everything in between. We think about to whom. Do we do something for the whole school? Do we do something for a classroom? Do we do something for targeted kids? What do we do? There's a whole range of different things that are done, and then there are what I call these kind of really important prevailing concerns when we work in schools, and kind of the whole mental health and well-being. The issues of consent, issues of confidentiality, the evidence base, which is incredibly important, and then whose responsibility is it? Is education? Is it health? Is education? Is it health? Is education? Is it health? The policy people. Can you tell us? Because no one can agree. So then actually what happens is decisions, I think, aren't taken. And these kind of arrows just kind of highlight the areas that we've been working on to try and understand and unpick. But when you say school-based mental health, basically it can mean anything in this kind of permutation and combination of issues. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about the OxWell survey. I'm going to then focus on two areas of our findings: friendship and belonging, because I feel that these are kind of our lowest hanging fruit, which is why I was really excited to share my thoughts with you about it. If we have time, you said 35 minutes, so I'm watching my clock carefully. I'll stop. If I have time, I'll talk to you about networks of care, which is some of our analyses, and bring in the belonging and social media if I have time. So what is the OxWell survey? What do we ask? How do we run it? What's our thinking about it? So the OxWell survey is a survey that we've run. We've just started our 5th wave this week, so I've had my first 3,000 students participate. My first big school complaint just before coming here. So that's it's a big survey. In 2023, they answered 200 to 350 questions. So it's a massive investment of time from young people, for which we're incredibly grateful. So there's that discrepancy, because if, for example, we ask, have you self-harmed? If they say yes, then you might answer 10 more questions about self-harm. If you answer no, you just go straight on to the next. So people can finish it quickly or be asked more questions depending on their answers. It asks about a whole range of well-being, mental health factors, risk and protective factors. In 2023, about 40,000 students participated from 180 schools, primary, secondary and further education colleges from years 5 to 13, which is 8-year-olds to 18-year-olds. Schools get individual reports, they get access to a data portal, so we really, really, really want people to look at data, to base decisions in their schools based on the data of the kids in their schools. So we try and make that as easy as possible. We really don't want to identify kids. We don't ask their names, we don't ask their date of birth, we don't ask their address. We really just don't want to know them, who they are, and ever track what they've told us. And we hope that enables them to be more accurate in their responses. We don't do it unless the local authority contributes a sum of money in order to run the survey in their area, and that's all around implementation science. So I found that a local authority might say, yeah, absolutely, do the survey and never look at the results. And although we're looking at the results and a big group of researchers are looking at it, I'm really not interested if local authorities aren't going to implement change as a result. So unfortunately, I find the only currency is money. So if they pay in, then I can have that discussion early. Who's going to look at the results? What are you going to do with it? What do you want us to ask? So we kind of are much more able to bring about change, and we've also been working in non-mainstream settings. So we started in 2019. It's what we call a repeated cross-sectional survey. About 5,000, just over 4,000 in 2019. We got a COVID wave in 2020, 31,000 in 2021, 42,000 in 2023. 2025 we've changed it quite dramatically. We've made it much, much shorter. We're only working with 2 local authorities. We're trying to get as many schools in depth. These local authorities that are really working with us to gather data and to work to implement change. So that's the numbers that I'm going to be presenting to you from 2023. About 17,000 Liverpool, 8,000 Oxfordshire, 12,000, 13,000 in Berkshire. So what we've got is an area, Oxfordshire, that has high inequality, Liverpool, relatively high deprivation, and Berkshire, quite high kind of ethnic minority mix as well. So I feel a very kind of representative population of the UK. About 50% of our students come from schools that lie in postcodes that are called quintiles 1 and 2, so the most deprived quintiles as well. So you can look on our website, but that's just kind of giving a glance of kind of what we kind of do with the data. And I won't talk too much about this kind of mental health, public mental health schema that we try and work towards, but kind of I can talk more about it later if you want. But basically I feel that understanding the influences of children, we should think about interpersonal influences, institutional influences and community influences, and we've written about this. And my argument is at the heart of those 3 lies schools. So why I'm really interested in that whole world of schools as kind of key in understanding the mental health and well-being of our student population. So what do we ask? Well, we ask quite a lot. So I'm not going to go into detail about that, but we really ask, you know, everything that we think could contribute to well-being. So around friendships, around sleep, around physical activity, about diet, also around mental illness. So we have kind of the RCADS, which is a measure of depression, anxiety. We ask about eating disorders. We ask about social media, etc. You know, because we asked so many questions before, we had an opportunity to really investigate a whole range of areas that are important. And also, because we ask it in this repeated way, we can be quite responsive. So you can ask things, what's happening with X, what's happening with Y, who's looking at this social media platform, for example. That actually the questions 2 years ago are not really relevant to today's young people, because everything changes so rapidly. So we want to kind of be able to be flexible as well. And we run the survey. Well, as I said, the local authorities help us engage with schools, and we do a whole load of things, but we give really early reports to schools. Looked a bit like that. School gets reports like that. Don't deal with it in detail, but this is why the schools come back, because they get information that's also useful to them. And we have a website, so you know, as much as we can, we put it all on there. So as I said, responsive account issues, we were able to look, for example, in COVID times, you know, we published probably one of our highest impact papers was a paper called Happier in Lockdown, where we were able to kind of in the first lockdown track, you know, but almost a third of young people said they were happier in lockdown. So it's not denying the fact that there were a very, very vulnerable group for whom their vulnerabilities did explode in the lockdowns, but actually there was also a massive group for whom they were reporting improved well-being, and that's an opportunity to understand and learn what the drivers of that might have been. Because last time we looked quite a lot at vaping, because our local authority partners wanted us to look at that, and then social media influences, you know, constantly concerning, changing, confusing benefits and kind of risks as well. So I'll just give you kind of some kind of ideas. Like, so we asked for the first time in 23, do you think you're neurodiverse? Or we asked, do you think you have dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, and or autism, brackets, or neurodiverse in some other way? 20% ticked that box. So in 2025, we are really going in a lot more depth about all of those areas. I won't kind of go into details, but you know, just kind of we asked about the cost of living crisis and eating problems. So kind of 22% were kind of saying that they were skipping meals at school due to shape and weight concerns. 18% had said that they had vomited. They had brought up food following a meal. We ask about, do they feel safe? You know, what proportion saying they feel safe or very unsafe, either at home, 3%. At school in Oxfordshire it was about 12% of the total, it was about 10%, so quite a lot of feeling unsafe at school. That's just not okay really, is it? And then 8% are saying on the journey to and from school they're feeling unsafe. So schools have looked at this data, local authorities have looked at this data, looked at bullying alongside that, and some have said, oh actually, like our bullying is happening on the way to school, on the way from home from school, so they're able to bring about new policies about staffing the outside school areas after school to try and enable feelings of safety. So I'll just move on. So I think the strengths of the study are it's anonymous, we can get data on quite sensitive issues because we don't ask them to identify themselves, we can be a bit responsive. We like to encourage inquiry. We're getting kind of provision changing quite a lot because our local authority partners are really looking at the data. It's taken 4 waves to get them to look at the data. Most people are scared of data, I get it, but we're hoping it's really getting better now. The weaknesses are it's been very opportunistic. Like we took a legacy survey that had been done in Gloucestershire. 100,000 students had completed it over 10 years, so we thought let's get that data, but then it became impossible to get that data. Then we had a survey we hadn't developed. So there are lots of kind of complexities of bringing the survey aligned with more validated measures. Funding, well, was always just opportunistic, so we never really had a long-term vision. We were just kind of trying what we could. It's cross-sectional in nature, so we can't make links. We had planned for it to become longitudinal so that we could, but we're so convinced that young people won't give us accurate responses on the issues that we're most interested in that we've decided not to pursue linkage. We're sticking with the cross-sectional model. All right. And then just thinking about inquiry, so we create a data platform so a school can go in and say, I want to know what the boys in year 8 who say they're being bullied, what other factors are there, and they can look at that. Schools get these reports that are kind of 60 pages long and they find it really kind of useful. So, and half of the schools then log into the data portal afterwards. The commissioners are using it in really interesting ways, and then we're able to encourage kind of citywide things. But that's not the point of the talk, so I'll just move over. That's the dashboard that the school could get. Okay, and then Liverpool, for example, early on invited 150 kids who did the survey. So these are the early findings. What do you think we should do with them? So that's about co-production. And Liverpool's used it extensively in public health and education, in broader areas, and in health provision as well. So I feel that you have to have that in order to justify the massive investment of time and trust that kids put into it. And kids hear that it's being used, and so I think they're happy to do it. All right, so now I'll get to what I promised to talk about, which is some of our friendship findings. I'm drawing heavily on the work of Tanya Manchanda, my DPhil student, who is looking only at friendships in her DPhil. I think it's come from the fact that we just don't understand what friendship is anymore. What is it? Is it online? Is it in person? What? I went out with my daughter a few years ago, and I was she's a teenager, and she went, oh yeah, lots of my friends are here. I'm like, well then why don't you say hello? She went, well, I would never do that. I'm like, okay, I don't understand that. As friends in my day, you say hello, but basically all the school kids of Oxfordshire are friends with each other on social media. So they're aware of each other. They might never have spoken to each other, but they, so I'm like, I don't understand what friendship is, so we're really quite curious about that. So we ask quite a lot of questions about friendship, and I'll present some of her findings to you, if that's all right. So we've done the analyses around well-being and friendship quality for you. So it comes as no surprise, I think, that well-being and friendship quality are associated. So higher quality friendships indicate better well-being. So what we have down here is friendship quality. High, intermediate, low, and what we have up there is well-being scores. So you can see the high friendship to low friendship and well-being. I suppose that comes as no great surprise, but it's a very clear association. Then we asked according to gender. Now, what we're really learning a lot about is the gender diverse population. So we've got the data from girls, from boys, and then GD is gender diverse, and then we have this GND category, which is gender non-disclosing, because an important proportion of kids don't want to tell us, but I don't think we should ignore their findings. So we think that it's really important to categorise them as gender non-disclosing. They're falling much closer to gender diverse in all our measures than in any other group. And so it's really important, I think, that we include them. So it's about 3.5% of the sample are falling into gender diverse or gender non-disclosing from 2023. Needless to say, we're going to ask it much, much better in 2025. We've gone through a long process with gender diverse young people advising us about how to ask this well. So we looked here at WEMWebs again, so well-being measure, and gender. So this is girls, so this is boys, gender diverse and gender non-disclosing. So what you see here is that boys have the highest well-being at all levels of friendship quality. But they have the greatest drop when they have low quality friends. So this is the kind of boys, sorry, you can't see that, sorry, this is friendship quality, key part of the slide. So high is red, intermediate is green, and blue is low. So that's the quality of friendship against well-being scores. Girls, boys, gender diverse. So you see the boys' well-being scores on that second dot, but if they feel that their friendship qualities are low, that seems to have the greatest difference in their well-being scores. And gender diverse adolescents have the lowest mental well-being scores overall.
What age is this?
So this is predominantly the secondary school population,
yeah,
which is ages 11 to 18.
Okay, great.
I think we've got a slide on year group. Ta-da! But it's not by gender.
Yeah.
But the data is, I just want to say, available to you all to look at. So if anybody wants to look at it, we've put the data on something called the Brainwaves Hub, which is part of the Dementia Platforms UK. We just think most people don't want to go on a dementia platform to look at adolescent data, but we've made it freely available. So you just have to fill in an application form. It comes to me, I'm happy to grant it. I'm really, this data is there. So any kind of additional analyses anybody wants to do, you won't be able to identify the kids. We removed school and regional ID on the DP UK platform, but this is available to anyone to look at. So please, if you've got students who want to look at it, if you want to look at it, it's available to you. So this is by year group, friendship quality. So you can see that the quality of friendships seems to go down. So looking at well-being and friendship quality, you can see this kind of general trend, that kind of the lower friendship quality overall have got lower well-being, but also there's just this general trend as you get older in age. Everything seems to get worse as you get older in age. All the kind of mental illness indices also get worse as you get older. So years 12 and 13 have the highest depression and anxiety scores as well as the lowest well-being scores. So friendship quality seems to be protective, where high quality friendship is associated with better well-being for all year groups. And then this is about neurodivergent status. So this is self-identified, very, very broad category of neurodivergence. As I said, the question is, do you think you're dyspraxic, dyslexic, have ADHD or ASD? And then looking at the well-being and friendship. So this here is yes, I think I am neurodivergent. Remember, 20% of the sample said that. No, not sure, prefer not to say. Interesting, isn't it? This prefer not to say seems to get closer to, we want to write a whole thesis on prefer not to say and what that means in surveys, or leaving blank. Because they can be just excluded, but actually we need to think about them more seriously. So that shows kind of the association between friendship quality and well-being, moderated by neurodivergent status as well. And then, we're really kind of curious about this kind of online friendships. So we just ask a lot about online Do you go more to online? Do you go more to in person? When you're distressed, do you prefer to speak to your online friends? In-person friends? So we kind of asked this down here. This is the one, well-being, and then at the bottom is amount of online close friendships. All their close friendships are online, to none of their close friendships being online. We don't quite understand the findings, so you can look at it and interpret for yourself. So this is according to friendship quality. I think we're concluding that if you've got a bit of both, it's probably best, but we don't quite understand the group for whom all their friendships are online and they have quite high friendship quality in webs. But, you know, this is where quantitative data really needs that mixed methods approach, qualitative inquiry to ask. So Tanya is now kind of interviewing young people at school and asking a lot about these questions in more detail. So we also asked about the function of friendship. So, you know, so we took 5 questions from the 25-item McGill Friendship Functions questionnaire. So this kind of looks at different functions of friendship and rates their quality. And the functions are around intimacy, reliability, reliable alliance, emotional security and help. Now we couldn't ask the 25, so we went to our Young People's Advisory Group and asked them to choose the 5 most discerning questions about covering the different areas of friendship. So we didn't choose which 5 to ask, but the 5 that they chose did cover the different domains, which was important to us. So we asked, you know, are your friends people that I can tell private things to? Are they people that you would stay my friend even if other people criticised me? Would want to stay my friend even if we didn't see each other for a few months? Make me feel better when I'm upset and help me when I need it. So we're able now to look at a lot of these measures according to friendship function as well. We're able to look at neurodivergent status and where they rate their friendships in this regard. We're able to look at according to well-being status as well. So again, with the friendship quality, which I've already presented you, it's how well you get along with your friends. And then this is the kind of in-person versus online support that we're trying to understand. So when you are the question we asked was, when you are most distressed and want to speak to a friend, how important is it for you to meet them face-to-face and in person? You know, so we're just trying to understand. So basically, what I say to schools is, our biggest system of mental health support in schools are friends. Right? So let's understand how they get used, why they get used, for what problems they get used, which group are most likely to use them. We also ask a lot about, as I said, service provision. And in those questions we go, you know, have you gone to a friend? They're second to carers. They're second to carers in how likely you are, for example, after self-harm. 40% will go to a friend for help, but less than half of them find that helpful. So we're trying to just understand, so is it online, is it in person? Because we don't understand the world, you know, and it's constantly changing, we're just trying to unpick it all. So this is kind of a plot of well-being along the x-axis, and then, you know, looking at like well-being according to whether you're more likely to prefer in-person friendships when distressed versus, you know, not. And so this is according to gender: girls, boys, gender non-disclosing and gender diverse. So these are boys down here, girls up here, and gender diverse and gender non-disclosing in the middle. So you can see here, girls are most likely to value in-person friendships when they're more distressed. And that's just looking at it, kind of the odds of it, just another way to present the last graph. So looking at girls versus boys, which is the second one, and this is about well-being increases. So these are like looking at well-being, the higher your well-being, you know, where you fall in that. Because we're getting to 5:30, I'm not going to go in detail in these last slides, but I'm just going to say we've got kind of thinking about friendship functions and neurodivergent status. So just looking, it's very easy to see that there are differences according to what individuals feel are the functions of friendship according to these differences. So, neurodivergent individuals report weaker friendships across all 5 functions of friendship compared to non-neurodivergent individuals. The largest gaps are in kind of intimacy, reliable alliance, and emotional support. And those who preferred not to disclose their neurodivergent status reported the lowest scores, especially in intimacy and emotional support. So again, back to the group that don't, even in a survey where we're not trying to identify them, the group that don't tell us their answers are under that. So this is intimacy, reliable alliance, emotional support, the long-term reliable alliance and helpfulness, and then the non-neurodivergent, neurodivergent, not sure, prefer not to say. So the neurodivergent is this pink one, just looking at the different friendship functions. And then looking at those friendship functions by gender, the girls are in the kind of reddy pink colour, the boys in the blue. Sorry to be so predictable about the colour choices. Gender diverse purple and the gender non-disclosing green. So again, kind of differences in how friendships are rated. So girls consistently report the highest ratings across all friendship functions. Gender diverse individuals, the lowest ratings. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about belonging, if that's all right. As you can feel, I can happily talk for hours, but I won't. So we ask a question about, do you feel part of your school? How much do you feel part of your school? And it's been so interesting and so important, and the associations with wellbeing is so kind of stark that it's really kind of propelled, I feel, really, really useful discussions. So, for example, the head teachers of Oxfordshire secondary schools at their conference made belonging the theme of it. They invited me to come and talk and share the findings. A real kind of shift in, actually, let's not focus on academic attainment. Let's, the lowest hanging fruit is, get the belonging, get the friendships right, and then probably a lot of these other factors will become easier to achieve. So how much do you agree with the following statement? I feel like I am part of my school. So those with higher well-being had a higher sense of belonging. And year group differences, with year 10 having the lowest sense of belonging. Year 10's a great year. Like, they're so critical of everything. Every year 10 kid thinks their school deals really badly with bullying. So I tell the schools, don't worry, you have to compare yourself to all the other year 10. So if something's going on in year 10, that, that kind of, either you're much more aware of injustice, and so you notice it much more. I don't know what's going on, but it's quite interesting. So this is across the year groups, like how the change lots of feeling a sense of belonging. So we take year 7 as the reference group, and you see that kind of that sense of belonging definitely increases in the 6th form, but gets quite low around year 10. And then we're able to look at kind of school belonging according to different ethnicities. So the pink is the agree, the blue is the disagree, and here we've got kind of the Caucasian white population. About 50% feel they belong to their school. Much lower proportion amongst the population identifies black and kind of other. So really important to think about, what is that saying about our schools? And because we've had 40,000 answer these questions, we really can look at these numbers in really interesting ways. So that's biodiversity again. And then friendships, quality and school belonging. So if you have high friendship quality, intermediate friendship quality and low friendship quality, and look how starkly your sense of belonging at school seems to change. And that's according to well-being and school belonging. So with well-being score there, agreeing they belong here, disagreeing there, and kind of that association. And belonging according to extracurricular activities. So look at this. If you feel that your school offers extracurricular activities, you have much more likely to agree that you feel you belong in school than those that don't. So, these are kind of, I suppose, what I think of as the low-hanging fruit. This is actually very, very simple to change. This is something you can intervene in. This isn't like changing family structure and poverty. You know, those are really difficult things for us as kind of researchers. Go, okay, improve kind of, income. You know, this is actually something that, you know, schools can actually think about. We looked at it according to kind of school detention and belonging. Again, you know, if you've kind of been getting frequent detentions, you know, you actually strongly, you know, you're much less likely to feel that you belong in your school. And what about gender identity and belonging? So for the group that are extremely worried about their gender identity, that's the group that agree they feel they belong in their school, and that's the group that feel they don't belong. So it's an interesting marker. So I think I'll stop there. Shall I stop there for discussion? Because rather than yeah.
If you want to wrap up, yeah.
So I think why don't so I think basically what we have is there's a treatment called cognitive behaviour therapy. It's a kind of mainstay treatment for depression and anxiety. And you have this thing called the hot cross bun. So I'm just going to rush through my slides to see whether I've kept that hot cross there. Okay. So you get this hot cross bun in, for example, the treatment of depression, right? So you've got kind of how people think I am worthless when you're depressed. You've got how you feel. I feel low. You've got your physical symptoms. I just want to, I feel really cold. I feel slow. Therefore, my actions are that I might be more likely to stay in my room and isolate myself because of all these kind of thoughts. And we call this the hot cross bun. And you can work through it in treatment of anxiety. You can work through it in the treatment of depression. So to address it, you could say, okay, let's just talk about your thoughts and challenge them, or talk about your feelings and challenge them. But we also find, actually, if you don't talk about your thoughts and you don't talk about your feelings, but you just change the action of, let's just get you out of your bedroom and do X, Y, and Z, and this is what we call behavioural activation, that actually you see a shift in thoughts and feelings without actually necessarily needing to talk about them and address them. So my thinking is with belonging and friendship, could it be the same? That actually there might be hundreds of drivers for why you struggle with friendships and why you don't feel you belong. But if there are ways that the school can facilitate you feeling you belong better, or facilitate friendships, we don't want, obviously, as schools go, okay, Jane, you've got to be friends with Jack. And we've put you together and now you're going to be friends. So you have to have this, the concept of an authentic friendship rather than a determined friendship. But there are things that schools can do to facilitate young people developing authentic friendships. It's usually in the extracurricular space. It's usually, and actually teachers can do way more than anybody else to facilitate that and think about what can we do in our environment or in what we do to enable young people to interact with others in a way that they're able to find out whether they are authentically, feeling kind of like they'd like to get to know each other and spend more time together, or all those functions of friendship. The same with belonging. So in 2025 we're asking 20 different questions. I'm really curious to see if it's a really stupid question and the kids just don't answer it well. But we list 20 different things that schools do to facilitate a sense of belonging. Assemblies, trips, family days, and we ask them which can you pick the 3 of these that make you feel a sense of belonging most with your school. So we can then go back to schools and say, look, the young people in these year groups or with these issues, these are the things that are going to help them. So I feel that I'm really keen to encourage a discussion around kind of things that we can change to enable belonging and friendship, which I believe potentially could shift the feeling of well-being across the board, and because they're very tractable. So I do have a final slide about thank you, but this is not my work. It's hundreds of amazing people who work with me, and especially young people and schools and teachers who devote a lot of time to help us gather the data. That is really what I'm presenting. So thank you very much.